Everybody has their own opinion on every topic under the sun. And when people often feel really strongly about their opinion, they try and change the opinions of other people. But why is this so difficult to do, and what can psychology tell us about why it's so challenging to change the opinions and perspectives of other people? Guys, welcome to another week's episode of GetPsyched, and this week we're going to be looking at the psychology behind why it's so hard to change people's minds. Now, before we get started, we've got a couple of new things that I want to flag to you that we've just launched on GetPsyched. We now have an audio podcast of our GetPsyched YouTube videos for you to be able to stay up to date with what's going on GetPsyched and every weekly upload that we have on Mondays in an audio format. So if you're on the go, if you're in the car, if you've got your headphones on, then you can listen to the GetPsyched podcast on iTunes and stay up to date with what's going on that way. We also have a brand new Twitter account for GetPsyched. If you go to Twitter and you search @_GetPsyched_, you'll find our brand new account. And also our Instagram handle has changed now to also @_GetPsyched_. So you'll be able to keep up to date with everything GetPsyched, everything that's going on with GetPsyched. We've got brand new ventures coming up. We've got a keynote going on at the British Psychological Society happening in November. There's an event that's on my Facebook page, on the GetPsyched Facebook page, to check that out if you're interested in going in Newcastle. And you'll be able to keep up to date with everything else that's going on. We're looking at developing some online workshops and some e-courses, even some face-to-face workshops and other things as well. So make sure to stay up to date with our social media accounts and our brand new podcast. Anyway, now let's get into the video, which this week we're going to be looking at why it's so hard to change people's opinions and people's perspectives on things. Now, we've probably all been there. We have a well-constructed, sound, rational argument or opinion on something, and the majority of people seem to agree with that rational opinion. Yet, there always seems to be one or two people who have a completely contrary opinion that seems completely far-fetched from reality. Now, what I mean by this is that, of course, people are going to have different opinions on different things, and we're going to have contrary views on a number of different subjects. But what I mean here is when you have that discussion with people and you have a really well-sound an understandable argument that you're sure that the majority of people would agree with, yet there's always those one or two people that seem to have a completely different viewpoint. And no matter how hard you try to change that person's mind or that person's perspective on this topic, you can't really seem to get through. So why is it so hard to change people's minds about something? Now, in truth, there is so much in this topic, and we could actually make a separate video on each point that I'll cover, and there'll be numerous other points that I haven't mentioned. When we think about drug addiction, we can use that as an example about how it's really challenging to actually change people's minds and perspectives. For example, telling a drug addict or an alcoholic that alcohol or drugs are bad for them isn't really going to change their perspectives or their opinions on continuing to use drugs and alcohol. However, it's human nature that we keep trying. We keep saying, it's bad for you that you're taking these drugs. It's bad that you smoke. It's bad that you drink. Yet it doesn't really seem to get through. It doesn't change that person's perspective or opinion, and it definitely doesn't change their actions more often than not. Now, drug addiction might seem like a bit of an extreme example, but it is a good one when we're starting to think about why it's so hard for us to change people's perspectives and opinions. For example, more often than not, the reward value of actually taking the drugs outweighs the health ramifications that the drug addict would experience. Some research has actually shown that outlining the health consequences to a drug addict for their drug use can actually have negative consequences. It can make people feel quite helpless and hopeless, and as a result, revert back to where they gain gratification, i.e. their drug abuse. Now, this might sound like a pretty basic example, but it tells us a lot about why it's so hard to change people's minds. Research has shown that holding on to an irrational viewpoint can actually construct somebody's identity to a larger group at whole. Now, by no means am I saying that drug addiction is solely based on somebody refusing to change their opinion or their viewpoint about drug abuse. There are numerous different factors as to why individuals go into drug addiction or why they're victims of drug abuse. And those are topics for a separate video altogether. What I'm using drug addiction as an example for is that example of how it can be really, really challenging to change the perspectives of individuals. Now, when I'm talking about their perspectives or their opinions, identifying them to a larger group at whole, that can be more objective. We can look at that in a variety of different situations. For example, it might be really challenging to change somebody's perspectives on gun control in the United States if that person is a member of the NRA, for example. Their opinion and their perspectives, no matter how outrageous we think they are, holds their identity to that group. It gives them their identity into that larger group. It's true to say that their views are very unlikely to change just by us trying to help them change their opinion. Now, in some ways, psychology can help us understand this a little bit better via social identity theory. Social identity theory is actually a topic I've looked at on GetPsyched before, so I encourage you to go back and have a look at that video to learn more about social identity theory. It basically is as follows, that somebody's opinion and somebody's viewpoint helps them feel strong within that social group that they're a part of. If they give up that perspective or that viewpoint, no matter how outlandish it is, they weaken their position, and they weaken their position within their group. So it's true to say that we can start to understand a little bit more about how it's so challenging to change somebody's perspectives and opinions on things when we look at the example of drug addiction, or when we look at examples of when people are members of larger groups. But there's a lot more to this as well. Theories such as self-affirmation theory state that views and opinions, no matter how outlandish, help actually keep us safe. These opinions, or self-affirmation theory, says that these opinions and perspectives help keep us safe to that larger group. It helps hold that identity to that larger group. Self-affirmation theory research shows that people who have really outlandish views and refuse to change from them often have real issues with self-esteem. This research says that often, not always, but often the case is that these people don't really view themselves in a very positive light. And this can infer to us a little bit about why it's so important for these people to hold strong to their opinions, no matter how outrageous they might seem. So it's true to say then that psychology tells us a lot about why it's so difficult to change people's minds or perspectives about things. Like I said at the start of the video, we've all been in that situation when we've had an argument or discussion with somebody who holds a viewpoint that is so contrary and so outlandish to us that it's actually hard to believe they really do believe this. Well, what things such as social identity theory and self-affirmation theory tell us is that it might not actually be the viewpoint that these people hold strong to, it could actually be the position that that viewpoint gives them in a larger social group that's hard to get away from. So the next time that you're in a discussion or a debate or an argument with somebody who's holding a viewpoint that's completely different to yours, and you really are struggling to believe that they actually hold true to this viewpoint, you can think a little bit more about how that viewpoint gives them safety and gives them strength, and how there might be underlying issues such as issues with self-esteem that are as a result of them holding onto those viewpoints. These outlandish perspectives and opinions might actually give that person strength in a larger social setting. The first example that really comes to my mind is perspectives on like flat earth theory, for example. The mainstream opinion and perspectives on the shape of the earth is that it is round, and yet we have a subgroup of people who believe that the earth is flat. Now, to us who are convinced that the world is round, flat earthers, as they're called, might seem to be really outlandish. Their perspectives might seem to be just completely crazy to some of us even. And when we try and change the opinion of these people or the perspectives of these people, it doesn't really seem to get anywhere. Well, we can understand a little bit more about that based on the research and the theories of psychology, and that these perspectives of flat earth might actually hold that person to that larger community. They might feel a part of that community, a part of that wider circle based on those opinions. So why would they want to give those opinions up? Okay guys, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of GetPsyched. Like I said, this week we've been looking at the psychology behind why it's so difficult to change people's perspectives. We've looked at things such as self-affirmation theory, we've looked at social identity theory, we've even looked at examples such as drug addiction and even the flat earth society. If you have your own perspectives and opinions, then make sure to share them in the comments below. If you've been enjoying GetPsyched, then you can hit that subscribe button and you can hit that little bell next to the subscribe button and get weekly reminders every time I upload every Monday. Thanks again guys for watching, and hopefully catch you next week.